During Mardi Gras in New Orleans, it's not uncommon to see some uncommon things. That's right. During Mardi Gras, it's not uncommon to be going down the street and you be walking and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, did I just see what I think I saw? That kind of happens often during Mardi Gras. Well, this past Mardi Gras, something happened that made world news. They had a guy. He was celebrating Mardi Gras and people were surrounding him because he had a pet possum. That's right. The man had a pet possum. So, as you know, possums are kind of strange looking animals. They are marsupials actually, and they have pouches that they carry their babies in, sort of like a kangaroo. But they're native to, the Northern America. They're all over Northern America. And I'm sure they're in different parts of the world too, different species of possum. But the possum that lives in Louisiana is a strange looking creature. Pointy nose, kind of beady eyes, bald tail, grayish, to off-whitish fur, bare feet that's like hands, kind of like a raccoon. But it could be a scary looking animal. They also play dead a lot. I've had possums play dead on me. Anyway, during Mardi Gras, we know that the city of New Orleans had a shortage of manpower when it came to the police department. So the police department does everything it can during Mardi Gras by reaching out to neighboring jurisdictions or neighboring parishes to ask police for help. And even in some instances, they may ask the state police to come help, which the state police often do help during Mardi Gras time in the city of New Orleans. Well, during the shortage, I'm assuming, because I've personally never witnessed this by being in Mardi Gras. When I was young, I don't never recall seeing the Wildlife and Fisheries Department assisting policing the streets during Mardi Gras time. But that's what happened this past Mardi Gras. The city of New Orleans had the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries helping police the streets. Now, once the manpower got back up to speed, I'm assuming once the state police came in with enough manpower, well, the wildlife fisheries went from policing people back to what they do best, policing pets and animals. Well, these particular wildlife agents who were on job and assignment in New Orleans happened to notice a crowd around this one guy who was on a bike, and he had a few dogs. I think he had a rabbit. And when they went over there to see what was going on, there was people surrounded, and there was a man who had a possum. That's right, he had a possum. The possum had a shirt on. The possum was with the man, causing a scene, celebration. People wanted to go take pictures with the possum. People wanted to be a part of the possum by saying hello to the possum. And I'm sure there's some tourists who probably don't see possums often, which is kind of crazy to me because possums live everywhere. I've seen possums in the actual city of New Orleans. Yeah, the CBD. Possums get around everywhere. Possums are one of those animals that can survive and thrive around people because they can hide in some unique places and you might not even know they're around you. But I see possums all the time. I even see dead possums on the street because possums aren't the fastest animal and they get run over by cars. Anyway, the Wildlife and Fisheries went up to this man and said, "Do you have a, permit to have that possum?" And he said, "Nah, I ain't got no permit. I didn't know you need a permit for possum. I didn't even know you needed a permit for possum. I didn't know anybody cared about having a possum. People raise possums, squirrels, raccoons. My mom had a whole bunch of raccoons that she fed. They wasn't in cages or pets, but they came and they eat up right out of your hand. You know what I mean? You see people feeding alligators in Louisiana. Actually got alligators in their backyard, So you think it's not that big of a deal to have a pet possum, but you cannot, by law, have a wild animal as a pet without a permit for multiple reasons. One, animals can be dangerous. Animals can cause disease. On a side note, I want you to know something. Possums do not carry rabies. Possum is an animal that cannot carry rabies. Therefore, if you get bit by a possum, you won't get bit. You will not receive rabies. A human can get rabies, but a possum can't get rabies. Go look it up. The reason a possum can't get rabies, from what I understand, is because their body temperature never reaches a high enough temperature to where rabies can live and thrive. So they're immune basically to rabies because of their core body temperature, which is lower than the needed temperature for rabies to survive. So you can mark that out with possum. Now, raccoon, boom. Yeah, raccoon can get them rabies just like a dog. He can get you, so you got to be careful. But possum can't. Anyway, Wildlife and Fisheries Department said, look, we're going to have to confiscate your possum. And the man's like, dang, I love this possum, you know? And so they started asking questions. Anyway, when the Wildlife and Fisheries Department was taking this possum, obviously it was during Mardi Gras, so there were people filming it, taking pictures. It was all around. Everybody's probably like, don't take his possum. Oh my gosh, you taking his possum. How can you take his possum? And so there's a big uproar about the possum. Even the guy whose name is William, I believe, I've read multiple articles on this, so I'm ad-libbing and paraphrasing from what I got in my memory. But the guy's name was William. Right? Go look up the articles. There's articles all over. WGNO News. There might be WWL News. And, local papers, even some world news covered the story. Anyway, the guy's name was William Voles, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But anyway, William, who was the owner of the possum, told the Wildlife and Fisheries Department, look, I've been raising that possum since he was a baby. And they were like, well, you can't have him without a permit. How did you come about this possum? He said, well, I saw that another possum, his mama possum, was hit in the street by a car. And of course, the baby was right there attached to the mom, because that's what baby possums do. They attach to their mother. So he took the baby possum and raised the possum from a baby since his mom was killed in the car. Obviously, this possum would have died in the street, likely probably crushed, run over, eaten by a bird, cat, something, I don't know. And he saved it. He saved the possum, and he raised it from a baby, and now the possum's a full-grown. Possums get pretty big, full-grown possum, probably about 2.5 feet long, I guess. And he's raising this possum. He got a T-shirt on the possum. The possum's hanging out with the rabbit, because the man got a rabbit. The man got the possum. The man got little small dogs, and they're all hanging together. It's a little motley crew, you know what I mean? A little crazy crew he got. And unusual crew, I wouldn't want to ride around with a possum, rabbit, and a bunch of dogs. Hey, but that's what some people do. And they do it in the city streets, you know what I mean? City streets in New Orleans. This ain't the outskirts. This ain't the farmlands. This ain't open lands. This ain't the swamp or nothing. This is in the city streets in New Orleans, Bourbon Street, Canal Street, etc. He's riding around, got this possum. Anyway, they confiscate the possum. And when they're confiscating the possum is reaching back out to him like, oh no, please don't take me from my daddy. And the Wildlife and Fisheries, we're separating. It's kind of like the thing you see on the news all the time when they talk about separating kids at the border. Well, now they're separating the possum from this man, And that's what he said. He really said this out of his own mouth. He said it was like his child was reaching back for him. Please come help me. Hey, listen, who am I to judge? I have a cat. My cat's part of my family. People love their animals. So they look at their animals as children. I know my cat's not a human, but I still love my cat. But I'm never, I guess, in a way, I'm not, I know enough to know that my cat's not a human. But, I love him. I love my cat probably more than a lot of people in this world because, my cat loves me back, So it's easy to, to love your pets and love your animals. But in the end of the day, they're not humans. They don't have the same kind of conscience and same kind of critical thinking that we have. They have a lot of instinctual, things that they do that we wouldn't do, and that differentiates them from, humans to animals. But anyway, this man said his possum reached for him like it was his kid. And the Wildlife and Fisheries Department obviously didn't care because it wasn't a kid, it was an animal. They took the animal, they brought the animal to the place. And once everybody found out, this dude was heartbroken. People in New Orleans took to social media and began to get in uproar and say, hey, look, the Wildlife and Fisheries need to return this possum. The possum's name was Saffron. That's right. So Saffron became a sensation overnight, and he's still a sensation today. Today, just yesterday, I read some articles where William still hasn't gotten Saffron back. Now, do I hope William gets Saffron back? Absolutely, I hope he gets Saffron back. What difference is? He's probably going to give Saffron a longer life than Saffron would have had if he would have lived in the wild, because I'm sure that the lifespan of a possum in the wild is way less than one in captivity. But the thing is that the same way you treat and care for a cat or a dog is not going to be the same way you would care and treat for a possum. So he didn't know what medicines to give this possum to get the fleas off. So the possum had flea issues and tapeworm issues. He had a sweater on the possum, which wasn't a good idea because possums need to cool themselves down. But he didn't know. He put the sweater on the possum out of love. But again, the Wildlife and Fisheries Department has a job to do, and it's to protect the environment and to protect the animals that reside in the environment and to protect people from wild animals. So they had a job to do. And I think that technically they could have looked the other way, but once they saw what they saw, they had to take Saffron, And so they took Saffron, and obviously when they brought him back to the vet checked Saffron out, gave Saffron medicine for fleas and ringworms. They made sure he was doing good health. Now, the initial statement from the Wildlife and Fisheries Department was that they were going to release Saffron back into the wild. I don't know where. There's a bunch of swamps. There's a bunch of wooded areas in Louisiana. They probably would have went somewhere that was more isolated and released Saffron back into the wild. Well, a petition that was on social media got, thousands and thousands of signatures. I don't know how many exactly, but a lot, enough to cause the media to start paying attention. Well, once the media started paying attention, they went to William, the owner of Saffron, and began to interview him. And he said, look, I still ain't got my possum back. I want to get Saffron back. I love Saffron. You could see he was heartbroken. He was missing a part of his family, his crew. And Wildlife and Fisheries was like, I think they were teeter tight and back and forth. You know what I mean? They're like, look, we got to do what's right by the possum. That's their job. We got to also protect the people, but to protect this possum and put this possum back in the wild where it belongs. Well, here's my thing. The possum was already domesticated because the dude hand-fed the possum. The dude raised the possum with dogs. So the possum had no fear of humans. The possum had no fear of dogs, probably no fear of cats, all things that which would usually harm a possum because in the wild, in the natural habitat, they're going to be cautious around all the ones I just named. But this possum being raised around all these domesticated pets and humans would probably be in more peril if you put him in the wild, because he would probably approach a dog or maybe a coyote, which would obviously eat the possum. So now they're coming back on their stance from releasing the possum back in the wild. Now they're saying that they're actually going to give the possum back to William and reunite them. I'm assuming once the actual reunion takes place, it's going to be this big thing. People actually went to social media and started doing artwork of Saffron the possum. So Saffron the possum is now a part of what you would call New Orleans history now. He's going to be a part of the culture of New Orleans, Saffron the possum. They're going to have posters of him. They're going to do artwork of him. They might name a street after Saffron the possum. I've seen stupider things done, So who knows what's going to happen? But considering that Wildlife and Fisheries is involved in it and a potential infraction of state law when it comes to wildlife and fisheries was committed by the possession of a wild and dangerous animal, the Wildlife and Fisheries had to get involved. Therefore, it enters the realm of legal, jurisdiction, legal ramifications, legal laws that are involved with wild animals. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about Saffron the possum. And now, let's keep up with Saffron the opossum and see if they're going to return Saffron the possum back to William. And once they have that reunion, it's going to be a beautiful thing. And I'm hoping that the Wildlife and Fisheries goes even further and maybe puts out an article or educational, promotional about how to deal with possums in the event that you find a baby possum without a mother and you decide to raise them and not call the Wildlife and Fisheries Department or the SPCA, which will probably just put the animal to sleep. And if you raise it, these are the proper medicines that you could and can't give a possum. These are the proper treatments for the fleas and the tapeworms that you can give a possum. And please don't put clothing on a possum. And this is what you should feed a possum. So there's different things that they could do to reach out to the community to help educate the community on how we should deal with wildlife, such as possums that come close to us all the time throughout cities and, suburban America where these animals reside. Possums, raccoons, armadillo, even coyotes. Yes, I've seen coyotes in the city of New Orleans with my own eyes. I've seen coyotes around here where I live at currently. And I've seen, in Louisiana, I've seen a lot of animals. There's a lot. I obviously see possums all the time. I see raccoons. I see armadillo. I see coyote. I've seen foxes in Louisiana. I've seen otters. I've seen beavers. I've seen a black bear with my own eyes. I've seen bobcat, not in the Audubon Zoo, but in the wild. I've seen these animals. I worked in the oil field, and I did a lot of, other work that, put me in some remote areas to where I had an opportunity to see some of these animals in their natural habitat. And it's a beautiful thing, alligators, etc. But we should respect wildlife and, live in peace and try to cohabitate with the wildlife around us and respect them. And just because you see a possum in your yard, there's no reason to panic and kill it. Let that possum be. He's just making his way, and don't, if an animal crawls on your car and you shoot an animal for crawling on your car, you really need to rethink that. Them animals have no bad intentions to destroy or hurt nobody's vehicle. They just walking on it. They don't know that means something to you. Find a way to cohabitate with these animals and not harm them when they do something that's not intentional, like poo in your garden. You don't want to shoot a dog or a cat because they poo in your garden. They just pooing outside. That's what they're supposed to do. I don't like it neither, but then I'm not going to hurt and harm an animal for it. Let's find a way to live in peace with these animals. Anyway, this was kind of not as serious of a topic as we're usually going to talk about on Southern Crime and Incarceration. It was a more light-hearted one about Saffron the opossum and how wildlife and fisheries got involved. But I'll keep you updated, once they actually reunite Saffron with William, and it'll be a great thumbs up story. But speaking of thumbs up, give me a thumbs up and give me a like as I get Southern Crime and Incarceration off the ground and get this thing going in 2024. Thanks again for watching.